Where do these ideas come from? What are their origins and roots? Since the beginning of time, men and women have been inspired by the beauty of romance to reach the heights of poetic rapture. Unfortunately, romance in this world usually leads to crushing disappointment. In every love story, there is the same story: the wonderful honeymoon of discovery and pursuit, followed by a life together for some weeks, months, years, or even decades, followed by a change of heart, betrayal, complacency, conflict, leading to separation, divorce, or even if the couple are together for their entire life, one of them must die first, leaving the other devastated and alone. Romantic love is one of the most intense, beautiful, enjoyable, demanding, and often devastating aspects of human existence. Yet despite that, no one has ever been able to live happily ever after. The ravaging onslaughts of material nature eventually ruin our idyllic dream. Nevertheless, that which we seek exists. It is the very foundation of the ultimate reality, or God. In fact, the romantic or conjugal love experienced by human beings is a mere reflection of spiritual reality, in which the same love exists, but in its absolute, pristine, pure state, uncontaminated by lust, desire, need, or fear. You might say, what's so wrong with these things? Lust, desire, need, or fear? Well, to totally reject romance is to fail to understand why it exists and why it is so universally pervasive and attractive to all of us. Instead of becoming bitter and renouncing romance like monks and nuns do, we should seek to understand its absolute, perfect, pure form as it exists with God. But wait a minute. What connection can romance have with God? Who is the absolute truth, the supreme reality? Aren't humans supposed to wish to come closer to God? Who wish to come closer to God? Aren't they supposed to give up romance, sex, and become renounced? The great sages of Sanatan Dharma, the Vedic culture from India, refer to romantic love, as we understand it in our novels and movies, as lust and not love. The word for love in Sanskrit is prema, which means pure, unmotivated, uninterrupted, unselfish love that is for the pleasure of God. It has no tinge of material lust, desire, sensual gratification, or need. If what we call romantic love is actually lust, then what is divine love or prema? Srila Prabhupada writes, as there is a difference between iron and gold, so there is a difference between material lust and divine love or prema. Although divine love may sometimes resemble material lust, the difference is as follows. The desire to satisfy one's own senses is called lust, while the desire to satisfy the senses of God or Krishna is called prema, or love of God. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declared, Prema Pumarto Mahan, to achieve love of God is the highest perfection of life. In earlier episodes, we have explored divine love with God as our master, our parent, our friend, and today we'll explore Madhurya Ras, or divine love with God, as the ultimate romantic, conjugal lover. That pure conjugal attraction, that intimate attraction to the greatest beauty and the pleasure of the supreme truth is what we'll be reading about in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. Let's unravel the mystery. In the verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it declares that it is the Galitam Phalam, the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic wisdom, The Vedas consist of hundreds of books on various aspects of knowledge. You've probably heard of Ayurveda, for example. That's probably the most famous one. But there's also astronomy, astrology, various sciences, biology, all kinds of things that are there in the Vedas. The ultimate of which, of course, is spiritual wisdom. And the summum bonum, the highest peak, the mountain of the highest knowledge, is the Srimad Bhagavatam, or we'll just say Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam consists of 18,000 verses and is divided over 12 cantos. Of those 12, this 10th canto, which we've been reading from in the past few weeks, is the heart and soul of the Bhagavatam because it talks about the divine pastimes of the Supreme Godhead, Sri Krishna, who appeared on this earth around 3000 BC or about 5,000 years ago. Now, in the 10th canto, which we'll be reading today and over the next few episodes, chapters 29 to 33 are the most intimate and sacred. It is my deepest honor to share them with you and my greatest fear of misrepresenting this pristine aspect of divine love in any way. I beg your forgiveness in advance if I say anything inappropriate. If anything is flawed, please know that it is I who am filled with anarthas, impurities, and not the Bhagavatam. I pray at the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani and all the gurus and saintly people with whom I have learned this great wisdom, that I may be able to present this knowledge as they would, that they may use me as an instrument for their words. With that, let's begin chapter 10, Canto 10, text, or chapter 29. Krishna and the gopis meet for the Ras dance. So the Ras Leela is known to a lot of people in India, at least. So that looks like this, Rasa Leela. And it's very misunderstood. And we're going to talk about it. And we're going to clarify a lot of things. But first we need to understand the context. And the context is this. There are 5 rasas, 5 ways in which we love God. The first is Shanta, which is through adoration. The second is Dasya, service, by serving God. The third is Vatsalya, or thinking of God as your parent. Not thinking of God as your parent, but rather thinking of God as your child and loving God as a parent. Okay? Then the fourth is Sakhya, or known as friendship, which is to think of God as your friend, as your buddy. And the final one, Madhurya, which is what we're going to be talking about today, is romantic love of God. So, who is this? Who is God? That's a big question that people have asked for a long time. In the Vedas, he is declared as being Krishna. Who is this Krishna? Here are some images for you. I'll be showing you a lot more. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes, as we begin the famous narration of Sri Krishna's Rasa dance, a dance of love with the beautiful young girls, the gopis of Vrindavan's, question will inevitably arise in the minds of ordinary people. Is it appropriate for God to be dancing romantically with many young girls on a full moon autumn night? Srila Prabhupada painstakingly explains the spiritual purity of this transcendental pastime. Those advanced in the science of devotion will understand, the great teachers, the acharyas, the gurus, leave no doubt that Sri Krishna is full and satisfied in himself, free of all material desire, which arises from a sense of incompleteness or lack. Think about that statement. Material desire arises from a sense of incompleteness or lack. Does that seem accurate to you? The truth is that when we don't have something, we want it, we desire it. If somebody else has that something, we may think, oh, I'd like to have that too. So in that way, we find ourselves chasing our desires, wanting this or that or the other. And so that comes from a place of incompleteness or lack. Whereas that being who has no incompleteness or lack that is who we refer to as the Supreme Being. So the Isha Upanishad says this beautifully. Om Purnam Ada Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. Which means the Supreme Godhead, or Om, that is the short abbreviation. Krishna says in the Gita that I am the sound Om in the Vedic mantras. Om is perfect and complete, and because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete in itself. Even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete whole and the complete balance. Now that might sound very confusing to you right now, but actually quantum physicists have been talking about this lately, talking about how when you take from a particle, or rather from the energy of the universe, you take out some part, it doesn't get diminished. That which is the universe, or that which is God, is infinite. And to be infinite means that when you take something out of infinity, it still remains infinity. And that which you have taken out is complete in itself, and that which you have taken from there is also complete in itself. It is never diminished. Someone was explaining to me the meaning of the number 108. And it's a very similar thing. It talks about how it adds up to 9, and how 9 is a number which never diminishes. You can multiply it. 3 times 3 is 9. You can go 6 plus 3 is 9. But the point is, there's a mathematical equation to this whole thing, and it never diminishes. It is one of those magical numbers, 108. So the Vedas tell us that the actual supreme lover is Krishna. Krishna means the all-attractive one, the one who attracts everybody, the supreme lover. I want you to really contemplate this. You know, those of you who have heard of archetypes, you might begin to understand that everything in our mind, everything in our consciousness follows the principle of archetypes. If there is an archetype, either conscious or unconscious, we seek that. We live by that. It is the model by which we live our lives. We may be conscious of it or unconscious of it. It doesn't matter. So you need to ask yourself, why is it we seek love? Why do we seek a love that's forever? Why do we seek a love that will fulfill us? Why do we seek soulmates? Why do we seek someone who will complete us? Why do we seek all this? And why is it universal, ubiquitous? It is there everywhere and in everyone, this longing. Some people might get disappointed, might get hurt, might feel, I don't want this anymore. I've seen too much of, the mess up that happens. But that's more of a reaction. That isn't the true desire. The true desire is to love and be loved. In one of these famous songs Nat King Cole sang, the greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. So why is this so true for all of us? Because it is the ultimate archetype. Where does it come from? It comes from God. You heard it in all religions of the world. You heard it even in the Bible. It is written to love God with all your heart, with all your mind, with your soul. Yeah. So if we are meant to love God, what does God look like? And what does God do? And how does God love? What does that love of God look like? So we've explored through the Bhagavatam many different ways of loving God. Today we're going to explore the ultimate way of loving God, romantic love. And it will answer for you many of the questions that you may have about the origins of love, to understand the root, the cause, and also the fulfillment. Perhaps it is that we have to go through all these different love stories of human love to understand what divine love is. Perhaps it is through our hits and misses, our ups and downs, our trials and tribulations with romantic love, that we will finally come to that ultimate destination of divine love. So it was saying here, the actual supreme lover is Krishna. The Vedanta Sutra begins by declaring that the absolute truth is the source of everything. And even Western philosophy was born in a somewhat awkward attempt at finding the original one behind the apparent many of material existence. In other words, what is the cause of everything? The Isha Upanishad puts this really beautifully when it talks about, it says, Om Purnam Adha Om Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. That the Supreme Godhead is perfect and complete in every way. And then the Bhagavatam repeats the same idea. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. In the first canto, the first chapter, the first verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadi Asya Yato Anyavat Itaras Chatesh Abhigya Swarat. O all-pervading personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth, Param Satyam, and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. Now, how do I know this is true or not? It's a question any intelligent person would ask. And I thank you if you have questions like that. Please write them down in the comments. Please write them down wherever you are, whether you're on Instagram or you're on LinkedIn or wherever else you're reading this, on YouTube, on Zoom, wherever you are. And put your thoughts down. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. Doesn't matter. All of it is good. I don't ask anyone to believe anything. I ask you to contemplate. I ask you to consider the possibility that that which is the source of all is also the source of all our desires and also the fulfillment of all our desires, because it is the source of everything. Out here, what we get is somehow temporary and is somehow leads to different miseries. The things of the world, the people of the world, give us enjoyment for some time, some pleasure, some goodness, but ultimately all that fades. If you want something that is lasting, there has to be a different answer. So here it is declaring that Krishna is the absolute truth. And if you've read the Bhagavad Gita, you will know Krishna declares the same himself. In fact, sages and wise people, and some of the wisest people going back thousands of years, have all declared the same. Krishna himself says it in the Gita. I am the source of all material and spiritual worlds, he says. Everything emanates from me. I am seated in everyone's heart. From me alone comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. These are not the statements of a son of God or a messenger of God. He is stating that he is the supreme absolute truth. Again, I ask you not to believe anything. I ask you to listen with an open mind and consider the possibility, because he demonstrates in every step how that is so, including in these most intimate pastimes. And if you've been watching for any of the earlier texts, you'll see he has been showing it again and again when he lifted Govardhan mountain with his little pinky finger for 7 days and nights, when he did all the various activities that he did that were so superhuman. And then when he shows us what love of God really is and what it looks like and how it feels and how we can all get to that. So what does all this have to do with romantic and conjugal love? Romantic love is one of the most intense, beautiful, demanding, and often devastating aspects of human existence. What connection can it have with God, who is the absolute truth and the supreme reality? In fact, romantic or conjugal love experienced by humans is a mere reflection of spiritual reality, in which the same love exists, but in its absolute and pure state. The pastimes that you will come across now are from Vrindavan, for when Krishna was here. Krishna is known as the original Cupid, and his exciting conjugal pastimes will be described in this section of the Bhagavatam. The gopis, who are his lovers, are the most attractive ladies in the universe. They are Krishna's internal or spiritual potency. The world is his external potency. Everything in this world is his external energy. And then he has an internal energy. And here in this chapter, we learn about how Krishna enjoyed the gopis and their beautiful, brilliant, feminine qualities, even though he was an 8-year-old boy when these events took place. So the Bhagavatam begins with this. Sri Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, full in all opulences. Yet upon seeing those autumn nights scented with blossoming jasmine flowers, he turned his mind toward loving affairs. To fulfill his purposes, he employed his internal energy, Yogamaya. Now, what is Yogamaya? Let's talk about that. There are two kinds of Maya. Maya means actually illusion. One is Yogamaya, the other is Mahamaya. In the world that we live in, we are surrounded by Mahamaya, the Maya or the illusion of this world. And that illusion has also got another name. It comes from Durga. Whereas Yogamaya is Subhadra, the sister of Krishna. So why is this important? We'll come to that in just a minute. I'll explain more to you later. But let's get some images, some pictures that depict this idea. We came across Yogamaya when Krishna's sister was killed by the king Kans. And she then rose up and said that the person who is going to kill you, that is Krishna, has already taken birth. And then she showed her 8-handed form at that time. You will also see that form here in the form of Durga. So, as I said, there are two kinds of Maya. In the spiritual world, God's energy is known as Yogamaya. That is spiritual energy. And in the material world, the same energy, known as Mahamaya, they're actually exactly the same, but just as electricity works in a heater differently and in a cooler differently, or an air conditioner differently, so also Maya works differently. The same energy works differently in the material world and in the spiritual world. The material Maya, Mahamaya, traps you in the material world and takes you away from God. Whereas Yoga Maya liberates you from the material world and brings you closer to the Supreme Godhead, Sri Krishna. The transcendental opulence in the spiritual world, all of the opulences of the spiritual world are created by Yoga Maya. All the pastimes and the Leela of Krishna that you're hearing about now are also, the stage is set by Yoga Maya. Whereas the opulences of the material world, so a person's wealth, fame, beauty, whatever it might be, is all part of Mahamaya. Mahamaya is temporary. Mahamaya is painful, causes suffering. And that is why spiritual seekers step away from it. Don't get attached to it. They know and understand what it is. And so they don't put a lot of importance on it. Whereas people who are in ignorance or darkness put all their effort into that. They devote their entire life to this illusion of this world, not realizing that the illusion will ultimately come and cause them to suffer. Every aspect of the illusion ultimately causes suffering. Durga Ma is the Mahamaya, while Subhadra is Yogamaya. In other words, both are Mayas, or controlling energies of Sri Krishna, and have the same task. So their task is the same: to make the living entity forget the fact that Krishna is the supreme being. So the Maya of this world, the illusions of this world, make us forget that God is actually in control. We try to become controllers. We try to be the greatest. We try to be the one who is the most loved. We forget that that position is not ours. We are here. We have received everything. We have received this body. It is by the grace of God that our heart is beating, that we're able to function, we're able to do anything at all. Our energy, our power is given to us. We didn't create it. We didn't create this body, neither even did our parents. They had sex, they gave birth, but that didn't mean that they created the kind of nose and eyes and ears that you would have, nor did they shape your DNA. They had nothing to do with that. But it's saying here that both of them make us forget that Krishna is the supreme being. So why would Yogamaya, which is the divine energy, make us forget also? I'll explain in just a moment. Durga, or the Mahamaya, usually works on the living beings who are either demonic or atheistic in nature by making them forget Krishna's supremacy and locking them in the prison of the material world. And by the way, when I use the word demonic here, I didn't mean some horned creature with red. No. The way it is used in the Vedas is asura, means that which is ungodly. Simply that. Okay? So you could call that atheistic, I guess. That which is against God. Same thing. It just simply means someone who lacks godly qualities. Now, an atheistic person could have godly qualities, and that person would also be on a spiritual path. That person could have divine qualities. So we go by qualities and not by beliefs. It's a very important distinction. A thing is known not because is what it is, not because you believe it is so, but because in fact it has the qualities of being so. I don't have to believe that gold is gold. I have to know the qualities of gold to determine whether it is gold in fact or not. So similarly, a human being is known by their qualities, their guna, and not by their belief. So just to be really clear about that, that is the difference between an asura and a sura, or an ungodly person and a godly person. And a godly person is not necessarily someone who just believes in God, but he doesn't live by the codes of God, doesn't live by dharma, does not follow the actual principles that are given in the various texts that are there to guide us. Such a person is not a godly person. That person is not, their conduct does not match with their belief system. They may have a belief. It's nice that you have a belief. That's interesting. That's cute. That's whatever. But your actions must match with your beliefs. Otherwise, it's just talk, and talk is cheap. Krishna's supremacy. Yeah, they forget Krishna's supremacy and become locked in the prison of the material world. Such living entities then start fighting for the supremacy of the material world. They want to be the supreme being. They want to be the greatest, the leader, the top notch, the top dog. And they remain in illusion. On the other hand, Yogamaya, or Subhadra, influences those who are pure devotees of Krishna or God. Under her influence, pure devotees forget that Krishna is the supreme God and start treating him like their own son, their own friend, their own lover, their own brother, etc. In this way, both Yogamaya and Mahamaya are the same and different, just as the light and heat of the sun are the same and different from each other. Please remember, if you are listening, I really appreciate and honor you being here. Feel free to ask questions. You won't remember them at the end, I'm positive. So write them now. I'll take them up at the end, but at least they'll be written down and I'll be able to clarify them for you, because this is a very deep and intimate subject matter. It is not easy to understand, and if you have doubts, don't take them with you. Clear them up. All right, now we begin to advance into the story. I just needed to lay down some of the background so that we could begin to actually get into it. The moon rose, anointing the face of the eastern horizon with the reddish hue of its comforting rays, and thus dispelling the pain of all who watched it rise. Now, have you ever seen a reddish moon? Some people call it a blood moon. Well, that's what it's called, I think, popularly. And that's what it's talking about right now. Krishna arranged, through his Yogamaya, to have a beautiful setting. And that beautiful setting involved a reddish moon. This was the setting for romance. The moon was like a beloved husband who returns after a long absence and adorns the face of his beloved wife with red kumkum. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with kumkum, but that's kind of how it looks. A little reddish powder that is placed upon a married woman's hair, like the parting of her hair, the center parting. And you'll see it here and here. So the moon was like a beloved husband who returns after a long absence and adorns the face of his beloved wife with red kumkum. This is a tradition in India, is first put on to a married woman when she first gets married. And then she's supposed to wear that through the rest of her days. It's supposed to make her more attractive, more beautiful, and more desirable. And also for people to know that she is married, of course. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna saw the unbroken disk of the full moon glowing with the red effulgence of newly applied kumkum or vermilion, as if it were the face of the goddess of fortune. So the goddess of fortune is Lakshmi, and that's a picture of Lakshmi. You'll notice she's also in red. He also saw the Kumuda lotuses opening in response to the moon's presence. Let's get you some pictures of lotuses here. Ooh, you go back. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna the Supreme Being now began to play sweetly on his flute, attracting the minds of the beautiful-eyed gopis. When the young women of Vrindavan heard Krishna's flute song, which arouses romantic feelings, their minds were captivated. They went to where their lover waited, each unknown to the others, moving so quickly that their earrings swung back and forth. All right, so this is Krishna playing on his flute. And so when the gopis heard that flute, they could not resist. They could not resist in any way at all. And here are some pictures of the gopis, the most beautiful women in the world, who would come, who were part of his entourage, who were part of his Leela, who had all come with Krishna to be able to take part in this. Many of them were his eternal companions from the spiritual world who had come here to be with him. And many were great saintly beings who had chosen to take birth as his lovers in this life. So when they heard Krishna's flute song, they could not resist. They dropped everything they were doing and rushed to see him. Some of the gopis were milking cows when they heard Krishna's flute. They stopped milking and went off to meet him. Some left milk curdling on the stove, and others left cakes burning on the oven. Some were getting dressed, feeding milk to their infants or serving their husbands. Others were taking their evening meals, washing themselves or putting on cosmetics. But all of them stopped whatever they were doing, and although their clothes and ornaments were in complete disarray, they stopped and rushed off to Krishna. Their husbands, fathers, brothers, and other relatives tried to stop them. But Krishna had already stolen their hearts. Enchanted by the sound of his flute, they refused to turn back. Some of the gopis, however, could not manage to get out of their homes, and instead they remained home with eyes closed, meditating upon him in pure love. For those gopis who could not manage to get out of their homes and instead remained behind, Krishna became visible to them. The intolerable separation from their beloved caused such an intense agony that burned away all impious karma. All their past bad karmas were now being burnt away. How? Why? Because of their intense longing, because of their intolerable feelings of separation. Remember, we're not talking about some ordinary human being. and love for that ordinary human being. We are talking about a deep, passionate, intimate love for God. And when you have that, it burns away all your karma. Maybe it's karma from thousands of lifetimes. All of that gets burned away. By meditating upon him, they realized or felt or experienced his embrace, and the ecstasy that they then felt exhausted even their material piety. So not only the negative, but also the positive. Although Krishna is the supreme soul, these girls simply thought of him as their male lover and associated with him in that intimate mood. Thus their karmic bondage was nullified, and they abandoned their material bodies. That is to say, they were able to go out of their material bodies and be with him in spirit. But why this thing about the karmic bondage being nullified? Well, that's because it is, whether you have good karma or bad karma, it keeps you in this world. Good karma has good results. So you get maybe to have a beautiful body, you get to have a very rich home you're born into, you get to have great success in your life. Good karma. Bad karma, the opposite. But all of it binds you to this world. The idea is to become free of karma, of karmic bondage, and then you're able to enter into the spiritual world. So this kind of meditation upon the divine, upon God, upon Krishna, freed them from the bondage of all karma. In the purport it is written, when the gopis experienced separation from their beloved, there arose in them both immeasurable happiness and unhappiness. Because of their intolerable separation from their beloved Krishna, the gopis felt terrible agony, which caused all inauspicious things to tremble. So on one hand, there was this deep longing of separation, because they were not being allowed to go, some of them. When they meditated on him, he became manifest and personally came to them, and they experienced great joy by embracing his body, which was full of transcendental love for them. The gopis also experienced great joy and feelings of ecstatic love. That joy made all their good fortune, both material and spiritual, seem paltry by comparison. Anyone who even hears of the gopis' feelings of separation and union, will feel that thousands of so-called desirable or auspicious objects are insignificant by comparison, including all the sense gratificatory pleasures found in millions of universes, and even the supersensory pleasures of spiritual bliss known as Brahmananda. You might have heard of this. The great pleasure of merging with the divine, with becoming one with, even that pleasure is superseded simply by hearing of the gopis. Thus, hearing of the gopis' distress and the joy that arose respectively out of their separation from Krishna and their union with him, anyone can get rid of all the reactions of his past karmic activities, both sinful and pious. Now, this whole narrative is taking place between some incredibly wise people. The first of whom is the king, Parikshit. If you've been following from the beginning, you know this. King Parikshit was destined to die in 7 days. He had been therefore called all the wise people, the sages of that time, and asked them, what should one do? How should one live? So you'll see King Parikshit kneeling, and the sage Shukdev, who was the wisest of them all, is sitting on the seat of honor, the throne. And he's answering all these questions. He's explaining to Parikshit the purpose of human life, the meaning of human life, why we are here, what is this world, who is God, what is our relationship with God. He's answering all kinds of questions. So you must know that questions are a very important part on the spiritual journey. Therefore, if you have any, please write them down. Again, I want to emphasize that. But questions, the entire Bhagavatam is full of questions. The entire Bhagavad Gita is full of questions. Challenge, question, interrogate, find out, be sure. Do not believe anything blindly, please. So King Parikshit asked, O sage, the gopis knew Krishna only as their lover, not as the supreme absolute truth. So how could these girls, their mind caught up in the waves of the modes of nature, that is to say of this in the material world, how could they free themselves from material attachment? So you get his question? He's thinking that the gopis are ordinary girls. Their minds are caught up in the material world. How can they become free from material attachment just by thinking of Krishna as their lover? It doesn't make any sense. The sage Shukadev said, and this is again, just to refresh your memory, Shukadev is the one who's sitting there, right? He's considered the greatest of all sages of that time. Shukadev said, this point was explained to you previously, since even Shishupal, who hated Krishna, achieved liberation. Then what to speak of the Supreme Lord's great and dear devotees? Why did Shishupal, who hated Krishna, achieve perfection? It's a very important question. The truth is this: hate is as powerful a meditation as love. So if you are going to not want to be interested in God, then hate God or love God. Either way, it's a meditation. Either way, it will lead to your liberation. But don't be in between. Don't be just like, I don't give a damn. I don't care. I'm not interested. Well, that's not going to take you anywhere. Then you're just stuck in this world. So, but those who hate and those who love passionately, deeply, intensely, who devote their entire life into that hatred or that love, will achieve God. So in this case, Shishupal hated Krishna, abused him, cursed him in front of everybody. Ultimately, Krishna killed him, but gave him liberation, freed him from the cycle of birth and death. And so what Parikshit is saying, or Sukadev Goswami is saying here, is that what to say of the Supreme Lord's dear devotees. O King, the Supreme Lord is infinite and immeasurable, and he is untouched by the influence of this material world because he is its controller. His personal appearance in this world is meant for bestowing the highest benefit on humanity. Persons who constantly direct their lust, anger, fear, protective affection, feelings of impersonal oneness, or friendship toward him are sure to become absorbed in thought of him. I want to read that again because it's just so intense here. People who constantly direct their lust toward him, their anger toward him, their fear toward him, their protective affection toward him, their feelings of oneness or friendship toward him are sure to become absorbed in thoughts of him. In the purport it is written, Shukadev has begun to narrate Krishna's most intimate pastime, the rasa dance, and Parikshit wants to remove the doubts of those who are listening. So this whole questioning is really to remove the doubts of the average person. Srila Madhvacharya has quoted a statement from the Skanda Purana that emphatically declares persons like the gopis to be liberated souls beyond the influence of material illusion. See, they did not achieve this place by being ordinary women. They were actually liberated souls. That is to say, who were free from the influence of this material world. One who is in the material world is affected by everything in this world. They're affected by the things that happen in nature. Let's say it gets too hot, gets too cold. They're affected by that. They're affected by what people say and what people do. You didn't say something, you said something bad to me, you hurt me, you insulted me. They're affected by that. They're also affected by what goes on in their own body and mind. So we have sufferings of all kinds. But one who is liberated is not affected by any of the stuff of this world because they're in this higher state of consciousness in which they're here, but they're free. It's not like you need to go to some heaven to be free. It's not like you need to die to then be liberated. No, you can be liberated right here and now. That's the beauty of this. So, at this point, Srila Madhvacharya quotes a statement from the Skanda Purana that emphatically declares persons like the gopis to be beyond the influence of material illusion. Eternal conjugal attraction to Krishna expressed in pure devotional service cannot develop in one who is not already liberated. For those who are devoted to Krishna, even in conjugal attraction, are already liberated. He then clarifies that one cannot be liberated simply by lusting after Krishna, but rather only by possessing conjugal attraction in pure devotion. So he's going to explain the difference. It's a really important point, so pay attention. He says the devas, the demigods, are always affectionately devoted to Krishna, and the young ladies of heaven called apsaras have lusty feelings towards him. Although some of them have pure devotion for him, untainted by material lust, only these apsaras are ready for liberation. Because without pure devotion or bhakti, one cannot achieve liberation. Okay, let me unpack this for you in a moment. I'll read a little more. The devotional service is not yogyam, or appropriate, unless free from material lust. One should not take cheaply the gopis' achievement of personal association with Krishna in conjugal relationship. There is abundant evidence that the gopis of Vrindavan are highly elevated, liberated souls, and thus their pastimes with Krishna are pure spiritual affairs. All right, if you remember earlier we talked about this, that the difference between what we call love in this world and between the love that is being described out here is very significant. The love that we have in this world is selfishly motivated. What's in it for me? Right? My needs are not being met. My desires are not being met. I want to be with someone who meets all of that, who fulfills me, who completes me. But not so in the spiritual sense. In a spiritual relationship, it is not about I, me, and mine. It is about the other. And that is very difficult for us amongst humans, because as humans we do have needs and we do have desires. And so ultimately that kind of relationship is only possible with God. Because there, when you give your all, He gives you His all. And you experience such an incredible feeling of ecstasy and of completeness and of complete devotion that you can put your whole life on the line and you feel ecstatic. So the reciprocation is incredible. The experience is what carries you through. It's not just that you sat there and you got 10,000 people, all going, yeah, and everybody's getting aroused and worked up. No, this is a deep internal experience. There needs to be no witness. Nobody needs to be around. It is just this deep inner ecstasy of divine love. Continues in the purport, the Supreme Lord's purpose is to bring all conditioned souls back home, back to Godhead, for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. We who are actually lusty in material consciousness can be purified and liberated just by hearing about Krishna's pastimes with the gopis. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Narad Muni, the great sage, states, O great soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease that was caused by the very same thing? So, very often you'll find that a thing that sometimes causes, so they do this with snake poison, I think, that when the person has been, you give, or even with vaccines, right? You give a little bit of that disease to the person in the form of a vaccine, and the person now develops an immunity and then now no longer gets sick. And I think there's something similar is done with snake venom as well, to help a person get cured or not get affected by snake bite. I'm not sure which one it is now. I know they do something to that effect. But he says here, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease that was caused by the very same thing? So one needs to know the art of how to do that, of course. And thus he explains that Krishna's romantic affairs, being pure spiritual activities, will cure those who hear about them of the disease of material lust. So let me once again go over this with you. What is the difference between lust or romantic love versus divine love or prema? Prabhupada explains, as there is a difference between iron and gold, so there is a difference between material lust and Krishna's loving affairs with the gopis. Although such loving affairs may sometimes resemble material lust, the difference is as follows. The desire to satisfy one's own senses is called lust, while the desire to satisfy the senses of God, of Krishna, is called prem, or love of God. So now ask yourself, even in your human relationships, is your desire for yourself or is your desire for the happiness of the other? in the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, I've heard of this very beautiful saying that what I love is what my beloved loves, and what my beloved loves is what I love. And so there is this incredible reciprocation. But as humans, we're not like that. As humans, we are always looking at what is in it for me. What do I want? And my needs are not being met. And I don't feel fulfilled. And therefore we have all these conflicts and all these fights. And I want to be I want things to be done a certain way, and my partner doesn't do it that way. And so now we're frustrated and unhappy. But really, it's our expectations. It's our needs. It's our fears. All of that is destroying this beautiful thing called love. What is the art of keeping that love alive? That art is this: to step out of the ego which is thinking in terms of I, me, and mine, to step out of the ego and to step into the other. We can practice this even in our human relationships, but the ultimate fulfillment of that will be with God. So, you can do it with your children, you can do it with your partner, you can do it with God. But there's a certain archetype, a certain model that we need to understand and learn from. When you begin with God, you learn the model, and now you can bring that into your life. So that's why this is valuable for you even here and now. The Bhagavatam continues, you should not be so astonished by Krishna, because he is the unborn master of all masters of mystic power, the supreme personality of Godhead. After all, he is the supreme Lord who liberates the world. Seeing that the girls of Vrindavan, Vraja, that was the village where Krishna was, seeing that they had arrived, Krishna, the best of speakers, greeted them with charming words and bewildered their minds. He said to them, O most fortunate ladies, welcome. Now remember, it's night time, the moon is out, it's autumn, it's beautiful, perfect weather, right? And he's made it such that it's the most romantic of time, and he's been playing his flute. They've heard his flute, and now they've come completely mesmerized. And as they've come to him, he asked them in a very formal voice, what may I do to please you? Is everything well in the village? Please tell me the reason for your coming here. He knows everything, but yet he is saying all these things, right? So here they are, and Krishna's asking them these questions. And they can't understand what's going on here. Krishna says, the night is quite frightening, and frightening creatures are lurking about. Please return to Vrindavan, Vraja. O slender-waisted girls, this is not a proper place for women. Because he's in the middle of the forest, right? And he's been playing his flute there, and they've all come running there. Not finding you at home, your mothers, fathers, sons, brothers, and husbands are certainly searching for you. Don't cause anxiety for your family members. Now that you've seen the Vrindavan forest full of flowers and resplendent with the light of the full moon, you've seen the beauty of the trees and their leaves trembling in the gentle breeze coming from the Yamuna river. Now go back to your village. Don't delay. O chaste ladies, serve your husbands and give milk to your crying babies. He's literally making them feel guilty for having come out to see him. On the other hand, perhaps you've come here out of your great love for me, which has taken control of your hearts. This is, of course, quite commendable on your part. Get very formal. Since all living entities possess natural affection for me, the highest religious duty for a woman is to sincerely serve her husband, therefore, and behave well towards her husband's family and take care of her children. See, this is the Vedic culture. This is how it's been. And I know in today's time, people don't think like that. They think, the highest duty for each person is to look out for themselves. Each person is going to get, be in control, be in charge, be the one, who's the boss, whatever it is in today's time. But that was not the way it was in Vedic culture. Today, what you're finding is many, many men and women are realizing that the old ways were a lot better than the new ways. They look down in present time on patriarchy, and yet it is in patriarchy that we find the longest living societies that have existed for the longest duration of time. in our modern day time where we've all gone towards feminism and so on. And feminism is a good thing. It has its merit and its value, but when taken too far, it becomes a problem. You'll find a lot of women feeling unsatisfied now, wanting someone who can be their partner, someone who will take care of them, someone who will support them, who's got their back. And you find a lot of men wanting to be with women like that, who want that, who are wanting to be a homemaker or wanting to raise a family. But it's not easy in today's time. It's become very confusing. We have a lot of mixed messages. I'm not saying one way is better or the other is worse. It's not black and white. We can take the best from both and we can find a way that actually works for us in present day time. Sometimes there are necessities. We need to be able to both work. Sometimes we can't do the things we want to do. But however it is, we need to learn from the old and the new and try to find the best combination that works in our lives. But Krishna is giving them the third degree here. Women who desire a good destination in the next life should never abandon a husband who has not fallen from his dharma. For a woman from a respectable family, petty adulterous affairs are always condemned. So now he's saying, you're trying to have an affair with me, but that's condemned. It's not according to dharma. It's not according to the religious codes. They bar one from heaven and ruin one's reputation and bring difficulty and fear. However, transcendental love for me arises by the devotional process of hearing about me. So if you do love me, you can hear about me. It's okay. By seeing my deity, by meditating on me and faithfully chanting my glories. The same result is not achieved by mere physical proximity, so please go back to your homes. Now, Shukadev says, on hearing these unpleasant words spoken by Krishna, the gopis became morose. Their great hopes were frustrated and they felt insurmountable anxiety. Their heads hanging down and their heavy, sorrowful breathing drying up their reddened lips, the gopis scratched the ground with their toes. Tears flowed from their eyes, making the kajal, the eye makeup, get all messed up. Thus they stood silently bearing the burden of their unhappiness. Although Krishna was their beloved and although they had abandoned all other objects of desire for his sake, he had been speaking to them unfavorably. Nevertheless, they remained unflinching in their attachment to him. Stopping their crying, they wiped their eyes and began to speak, their voices stammering with agitation. The beautiful gopis said, "O all-powerful one, you should not speak in this cruel way. Do not reject us who have renounced all material enjoyment to render devotional service to your lotus feet. Reciprocate with us, O stubborn one, just as the Supreme Lord Narayan reciprocates with his devotees in their endeavors for liberation." You're going to find right now that the gopis actually truly understood Krishna as the Supreme Being. They were not under any illusion. Our dear Krishna, as an expert in dharma, you have advised us that the proper religious duty for women is to faithfully serve their husbands, children, and other relatives. We agree that this principle is valid, but actually this service should be rendered to you. After all, you are the dearmost friend of all embodied souls. You are their most intimate relative, and indeed their very self. See, the arguments are incredible. Expert transcendentalists always direct their affection toward you because they recognize you as the true self, Swa-Atman, and you are Nitya Priya, or eternally beloved. What use do we have for these husbands, children, and relatives of ours who simply give us trouble? Therefore, O Supreme Controller, Parameshwara, grant us your mercy. O Lotus-eyed One, Aravindra Netra, please do not cut down our long-cherished hope to have your association. So they're calling him Parameshwar. They know he is the Supreme Controller. We all want to be controllers in this world. We all want to be in control of things. And we can't. And it causes so much of conflict. If you're in a relationship, it causes conflict. Whatever it is where you're trying to control, you will find conflict. Because everybody else wants to be in control too. And nobody likes to be controlled. Not even children. So they continue, until today our minds were absorbed in household affairs, but you easily stole both our minds and our hands away from our housework. Now our feet won't move one step from your lotus feet. How can we go back to the village? What would we do there? Now, this is, we all try to meditate. I don't know if you've tried, but if you have, you know how difficult it is to focus your mind on something. It's not easy at all. But here, what's happening is because Krishna is so attractive, because his flute is so attractive, because he looks so beautiful, because he is so adorable, you can't help it but fall in love. And when you fall in love with him, they say our minds and our hands have been stolen from our housework. Now our feet won't move. We can't leave you. We can't go away. We are hooked. We are completely in love. You know how it is to be in love with someone, and when you come to your beloved, you don't want to leave them. Dear Krishna, please pour the nectar of your lips upon the fire within our hearts, a fire you ignited with your smiling glances and sweet song of your flute. If you do not, we will consign our bodies to the fire of separation from you, O friend, and thus like yogis attain the abode of your lotus feet by meditation. O lotus-eyed one, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, considers it a festive occasion whenever she touches the soles of your lotus feet. And they say, from that time, you are very dear to the residents of the forest, and therefore we will also touch those lotus feet. From that time on, we will be unable even to stand in the presence of any other man, for we will have been fully satisfied by you. You can see the extent of their love here. They say then, O vanquisher of all distress, please show us mercy. To approach your lotus feet, we abandoned our families and homes, and we have no desire other than to serve you. Our hearts are burning with intense desires generated by your beautiful, smiling glances. O jewel among men, please make us your dasi, your maidservant. Now you may think, oh, what is this? Why should somebody want to be a maidservant of some man? But actually, this is true for everyone. Chaitanya says very clearly, Jivera Swarup Hoy Nitya Krishna Das, that the relationship that we all have with the divine, with God, is dasya. Jivera Swarup Hoy, that our Swarup, our original eternal nature, is that we are all nitya, eternally, Krishna Das, servants of God, servants of Krishna. So we are all eternally servants of God. We are here to serve. You may say, oh, wait a minute, I want to be the boss. I don't want to be the servant. But think about something. This body as a whole, right? We are like a part of that whole, like a finger, let's say, is to the body, right? We are a part of God. We are not God. Even if you think you are God, you're a tiny particle in this universe, okay? So if you are, you're particle God. So if there is this finger, it has connected to the body. Only when it is connected to the body can it function. When it is disconnected from the body, it cannot function. In the same way, when we are connected with God, we come alive. And when we are disconnected, we feel like we're dead. Now we take all these substances, drugs, alcohol, whatever, to make us feel a little sense of aliveness. But it's not real aliveness. Real aliveness comes from our soul, and real connection of the soul comes when we are connected to God. And then what is that relationship? It is this, dasyam. It is the feeling of, I am your humble servant. It is the feeling of humility. Think about it. My finger, what is the relationship that it has with my body? First, it needs to be connected, of course. But once it is connected, what is the relationship? Can it eat the food by itself? Can it enjoy by itself? No. It has to give pleasure to the entire body. When there is an itch, it needs to be able to itch. When there is need for food, it needs to be able to feed the food. When there is any desire that this finger needs to do, it needs to engage in service of the whole. When the part is engaged in service of the whole, then it is fulfilled. Then it also gets the benefit of the food. It also gets the benefit of everything else that the whole, the body, is getting. So in much the same way, when we are engaged in the service of God, then we become happy and fulfilled. So therefore the gopis are praying that may we become your dasi, your maidservant. Dear Krishna, what woman is in all the three worlds wouldn't deviate from dharma, would not deviate from religious behavior, when bewildered by the sweet, drawn-out melody of your flute. Your beauty makes all the world auspicious. Indeed, even the cows, birds, trees, and deer manifest the ecstatic symptoms of bodily hair standing on end when they see your beautiful form. Clearly, you have taken birth in this world to relieve the fear and distress of the people of Vrindavan, the village that they were in. Just as the supreme Godhead, the primeval Lord, Adi Purusha, protects the planets of the Devas, Suralok. Therefore, O friend, Bandho of the distressed, kindly place your lotus hand on your maidservants' hands and our burning breasts. Smiling upon hearing these despondent words, Sri Krishna, the supreme master of all masters of mystic yoga, mercifully enjoyed them through his, although he is self-satisfied. Among the assembled gopis, the infallible Lord, Supreme Being, Sri Krishna, appeared just like the moon surrounded by stars. He whose activities are so magnanimous made their faces blossom with his affectionate glances, and his broad smiles revealed the effulgence of his jasmine bud-like teeth. As the gopis sang his praises, that leader of hundreds of women sang loudly in reply. He moved among them wearing his Vaijayanti garland, beautifying the Vrindavan forest. Shri Krishna went with the gopis to the bank of the Yamuna river, where the sand was cooling and the wind, enlivened by the river's waves, bore the fragrance of lotuses. There Krishna threw his arms around the gopis and embraced them. He aroused Cupid in the most beautiful young ladies of Vraja by touching their hands, hair, thighs, belts, and breasts, by playfully scratching them with his fingernails, and also enjoyed joking with them, glancing at them, and laughing with them. In this way he enjoyed his pastimes. The gopis became proud of themselves for having achieved such special attention from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And each of them thought herself the best woman on earth. Krishna, seeing the gopis too proud of their good fortune, wanted to relieve them of their pride and show them further mercy. Thus he immediately disappeared. In our next episode, we'll talk more about what happened, how they went looking for him, where he went, what happened next. The next 2 or 3 episodes are going to be filled with this divine love, this divine romantic love for God. I hope you're enjoying this. I hope this touches your heart. I hope that you're able to see the beauty of what it is to love God as he appears in this beautiful form as Krishna. If you have questions, I hope you've written them down. I hope you've thought about them. We're ending at this point, and I would love to answer your questions. All questions are welcome. No question is bad or wrong or not important. Did you have any questions? Did you have any thoughts? Did you have any contemplations? Did you have any kind of insight? What did you feel? How did this sit with you? I have some comment here, but I'm not able to read it because it's perhaps in French. Nasiri, if you could please write down can you possibly translate that and put it in English? Or let's put it down into, once it goes on YouTube, I might be able to read your comment and see the translation from French, and maybe I'll respond later on in the comments on YouTube. By the way, all of these videos are on YouTube, and you'll find them there under Spiritual Wisdom Academy. I have all my videos there, or you can just type in my name, Rohit Juneja, and you'll find me there. I've got almost like 100 videos now of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and there's a whole playlist on the Bhagavad Gita. This is all under the title of Divine Love Podcast. You'll find that playlist, and you'll find all these episodes in there. And if you go to the Bhagavad Gita, that's a great place to start if you're just getting started on this path. But if you have any further questions, if maybe right now they weren't coming to your mind and maybe you think about the questions later, then go ahead and put them in the comments on YouTube or wherever you are. I'll be happy to answer. All right, and we're here every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific time and 10 p.m. Eastern. And if you're in India, then that's 7:30 a.m. on the next day, Wednesday. Whereas in US, it's on Tuesday. All right, I look forward to staying in touch with all of you. Thank you so much for being here. It's a great honor to be able to serve. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you.